Hey guys, welcome to tonight's broadcast. We're in season 2, episode 5. I always get confused about that. Season 2, episode 5, and the title for that is Spirit. And we are going to be talking about that as we go work through. There's a lot of interesting kind of like storylines or plot developments that happen in this particular episode. Janice is not sitting in with me tonight. Instead, it's Karen, and so that I'm glad that she's able to join us, and so I'm looking forward to the discussion. But before we jump into that, how you been doing?
Doing well, getting better.
Good. Yeah. So the good news is tomorrow, or let's see, tonight. Actually, we're recording this a day ahead.
Yeah.
But tonight, your husband Matt is finishing his
marriage and family therapy degree,
and he is graduating, and so we are all at that event tonight, and so it will. So you feel free to make comments in the thread as we go along, but we won't be responding ourselves individually to those. Or maybe if I get bored during the graduation ceremony, that I might, So the other good news about Karen and her family is that they have a new condo that they're moving into, or a condo that they're moving into at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. It's new to them. And so we're excited about that.
Yeah.
That out of all of the various people that applied for the housing there,
we were the least qualified.
Yeah, that's true. No job, no money, but the Lord opened the door for you, so that's cool. So okay, well, let's just go ahead and we'll get going with our broadcast, and I'm going to play our intro logo, and then we're going to bring in our guests. We have a couple new guests with us tonight, and so we'll welcome them in just a minute. Hey, Nora and Rick Boyce down there in the lower right-hand corner of our screen. And so welcome to the broadcast tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you. Now, you guys you're not in Seattle, and are you in Tacoma or where?
We're in Lakewood, Washington. It's southeast of Tacoma, or southwest, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
About 2 miles from Tacoma.
Yeah, okay. And you guys are Compass regulars up there? And so you watch the broadcasts on Sundays?
Yeah.
And so we appreciate that. So
and
so that's great. Go ahead. What were you saying?
And your messages are being forwarded. The notes being forwarded all over the world every week.
Yeah, Nora is one of my most active forwarders, and she sends out the messages to the Philippines and Australia and some other places like that. Canada? Cool.
Yes, Canada and also New Zealand and everywhere I know people.
Yeah. Well, it's an international ministry that we have going on here.
And changing the lives of people, and I appreciate that.
Great. So Val and Nikki are joining us from the beach tonight.
Rincon Parkway and just north of Ventura, right along the beach.
So they've been sending us photos of the different marine life that they're seeing out there. Seals, right?
Seals, squirrels,
dolphins,
jellyfish, and
was that dolphin dead in that one photo you sent?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. We saw about 3 of them. It's just they washed themselves up on the shore. And a couple of seals, they say, are old right now, and they're bringing themselves to shore. And they've been Marine Life has been notified, and they're gonna. I don't know what they're gonna do. Take them, rescue them. I'm not sure, but they're hanging out with us. They look a little tired, but they're doing good.
Well, Rick and I were talking about that before the broadcast started, and how we're going to drag ourselves up to shore. now that we're old and
And have to beach ourselves, huh?
Yeah, beach ourselves.
So come up
And-
here and just come up here, and we're only 2 houses down to the lake, and we cleaned up the lake, and
yeah,
we're
there you
only 2 houses
go.
down.
I'm ready. You guys got a nice little house up there, and I like the little house in the back. And I'm about at the place in my life where I'm ready to retire in your back house. Lorene, welcome this evening, and thank you for joining us. What's the latest for you guys?
Our kids went home, so now we're back to the routine. So
Back to normal. Yeah, once the grandkids go. So, yeah, everybody's in our house except for Matt. We got Karen and her 2 kids and their dog, and so it makes for a kind of a an active household.
Yeah.
You know. So, all right. So let's just go ahead and we jump in with our questions here tonight, and of course you can download those. There's the link that you can download these questions on your that we have on the broadcast, and so. And I noticed that Nora, you kind of you moved Rick off the screen, and I thought that maybe you just wanted it to be the Nora show.
I've tried to get rid of him for a long time, but it doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Let's don't be so blatant about it here in this broadcast. Okay. All right. So yeah, there you go. So. And so let's go ahead with our first question here. And it says, what moments did you particularly like in this episode? Anybody who wants to can share your thoughts. Or Karen.
Let him.
All right. I liked the part where Jesus just calls out to the man who has the demon in him, and they're like wrestling on the ground, and Jesus is walking up, and he just says, "Out!" and he stops right that very second, and the demon comes out of him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just
So-
really cool how he has command over the spiritual world.
Yeah, one of the many moments in the life of Christ where he demonstrates his authority over the spirit realm, the authority over nature in other instances, the authority over disease, and the authority over death. Mm-hmm. And so time after time, he demonstrates. Anybody else? Someone like to share what moments kind of particularly that you liked?
I think we both talked about it. We were both talking about how Jesus had a nice little conversation with Creepy John. But when they sat down before he had to leave, and his what he was meant to go.
Yeah, and he was talking
So I
about
thought that was
how
a really
it's
nice
getting real.
conversation.
You know, yeah.
Mhm.
That was a cool.
The Bible
moment.
doesn't say. The Bible doesn't talk about their relationship really, about being cousins. So I thought that was kind of cool to see them sit there and talk as they would, like growing up together and stuff. And I noticed how even John was pushing him to. Everybody's pushing him to move faster all the time, and he's always doing things in his own time. I think that's kind of good for us to see that he always does things in his time. He can't be pushed into it.
And his time is always the right time.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard for us. Go ahead, Larry.
And there was the one point where, he's saying goodbye to John, and he knows he's not going to see John, and he knows what's going to happen to John.
Right.
And it's just the actor does a really good job of having that emotion come on the stage.
Yeah. That is. Those are good. We've all had those probably moments in our life where we've know it's the last time we're going to see someone that we love, and I thought that they captured that really well. So let's go ahead with the next question here, and it says, in the opening of this episode, Mary is troubled when she sees the Romans on horseback. We don't know the backstory, but the obvious implication is that they represent something traumatic from her past. As disciples of Christ, stuff from our past can trigger us. What are some wise ways to manage this when that happens? Anybody?
I always, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Just try not to let it bother you. You can't let things from the past eat you. You know, it's going to be there,
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
but tomorrow's another day, and
Mhm.
if you let it eat at you, it's just going to make your days worse and worse. You want to get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And of
Well,
course,
when
Mary kind of. I was
I,
going to say, Mary. My turn. You'll be next. But Mary kind of spirals out of control. At that time. Go ahead, Nor.
well, I have seen so many bad things in the past, when uh, but I always put in my mind the word saying that all things work together for good to those who love
Mm-hmm.
the Lord. And the hardship and the trials and the ugly things happened in my life and other people's life normally
Mm-hmm.
produces more a better. I look at the positive result that it
Yeah.
has done in life. Probably it has done happened that way. Probably Rick and I will not be as close as we are, and we're not as close to the Lord as we are right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we just always look at the. We try to look at the. I try to look at and then I look about the mastership capitalize on a positive thing that happened, the positive thing that which is the result
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
ugly thing that happened in my life. And when I
Yeah.
capitalize on that, it makes things better.
Yeah.
And like my favorite verse is that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. Everything works good, no matter
Yeah.
how. There's always a good purpose for everything.
Yeah. Nikki, you were going to say something?
Well, she had that scripture in her hand, but she didn't look at it. And it was talking about he's there no matter where you are. He's always there with you. And I think we always have to remember that. And I
Yeah.
forget a lot. When you're in the middle of a crisis, you're panicking, and we need to know who we are in him. He loves us. He's with us. And we just
Mm-hmm.
have to remember that. It's so hard when we're upset like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they're trying to show. She had that little piece of paper in her hand, and she even knew it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she knew it, but it had not yet kind of connected, you know, with her.
Right.
So
I'm and
go
may
ahead, Lorraine.
Well, she hesitated in sharing with Rama, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I have done that in my older age. I've surrounded myself with, it's a very small little group, but it's people who I can call, and they always
Mm-hmm.
know something's wrong. And I have one friend, she's relentless on me once she hears me. And,
Mm-hmm.
she tells, speak it out, say it out. Do you think this is your fault? And she's
Yeah.
always calling me to
Mm-hmm.
remember that my sin is forgiven and that God's
Mm-hmm.
forgiven me and I have to forgive myself. And I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest part for me is forgiving myself.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. So, Nora, you were going to say something else? Were you
no, I
going to say
was about
something?
yeah, I was about to say that when we are so much in pain, and
Mm-hmm.
the way to alleviate from that pain, which I normally do, is to look at the God's goodness. Because when I'm in pain and I'm in sorrows, and the Lord doesn't like that. And
Mm-hmm.
if I allow that to happen, if we allow that to happen in our life, we are giving a liberty or a leeway for Satan to rejoice in our sorrows. Because
Yeah.
the Lord doesn't want us to be sad, or we want us to be miserable. And
No.
when I'm feeling miserable, and Satan said, "Ha, ha, 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 I got you." And so I think right away,
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, okay, this is not coming from God. This is coming from Satan." So,
Mm-hmm.
and he's ready, like a roaring lion, ready to devour me. So, just try to look other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
about the Lord's goodness.
When we talked about it, I can't remember when I talked about it last, but you know how that we we tend to kind of get overwhelmed with circumstances or our emotions, but we really need to stand on the promises
Ex-
of God and His Word. So let's just go ahead and we'll take the next question. It says the religious authorities interrogate Jesse. Remember, he's the guy who was at the pool that Jesus healed. They interrogate Jesse about his healing on the Sabbath, which in this case was a high holy feast day. Remember, it's the day before the Feast of the Tabernacles. And so, why do you think Jesus chose to perform this miracle like this? And have you ever had experiences that challenged your foregone conclusions about spirituality? So why do you think that Jesus chose to perform this miracle like this?
Because he just happened to be in town at the time.
Yeah, maybe.
He didn't have a reservation and he had to get it done.
Yeah.
Well, we know he wanted to cause havoc.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of deliberately.
I think more of it is kind of like instigating. He's instigating chaos on there. I know among the priests.
Yeah,
Trying to
he's,
he's provoking
yeah,
them.
he is. He's poking the bear. And so it's because they needed to have their predictable little world shook up a bit. So, how about you? Have you ever had experiences that challenged your foregone conclusions about spirituality? Anybody?
I definitely have had a lot of situations that have like pushed me out of my comfort zone. Like I feel like that a lot of times God calls us to do the uncomfortable or the awkward, and it's not usually that difficult of something. It's not like he says, go heal this person or something like that, but he'll like put this burning challenge in me. Oh, go give so and so a hug, or go pray for them, or something like that, where it's like, well, I don't really know that person that well, God, what about have somebody else go do it? Or there's like a resistance where God oftentimes uses the uncomfortable and the awkward situations to bring us, to push us out of our comfort zone and draw us closer to him and in obedience to him. Yeah.
I know for me that one of the ways that has played out in my life is through doing mission work, and that a lot of times in foreign countries, they are dealing with realities that we just aren't really facing here in our lives typically. And one of the things too that I've seen in some places, I'm thinking about in particular in Cambodia, when I've worked there, is that a lot of times they don't have really the depth of spiritual heritage or we came to Cambodia not that long after the Khmer Rouge devastated the country, and so they don't have like a lot of that same religious tradition that we have here in America or whatever else. And I begin to see that a lot of the things that we think are kind of like so essential to making, to doing church right, if you will, that God has the grace to bring people along where they're at, and to accomplish great things through all of that.
You don't need 2 songs, the communion, the message, and then another 2 songs.
Lorene?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. My foregone conclusions about spirituality are often confused with religiousness. And there's a big difference between the two, and they're not the same. And that's what, I agree with you on seeing people who aren't used to our way, and they're deeply, deeply spiritual.
Yeah.
And they're not worried about the rules, like the song before communion, the prayer afterwards, all those things that I enjoy because I know they're coming, I know what to expect, but that's not necessarily spirituality. you know.
Were you with us? You've been to Africa, right? Yeah. Were you with us at time at church? I'll never forget it. Is that during the offering time, some
Yes.
people would bring their money, but a lot of
Yes.
people would bring their chickens.
Chickens. Yeah.
They would bring their. No, I'm not kidding you. They would bring their chickens up to kind of like where the pulpit was, and they would tie up their leg or whatever so the chicken wouldn't get away. But I think I was preaching at one of those services once where they brought up a chicken, but he escaped the the rope that had him tied, or the little cord that had him tied up. And and I told him, I says, I can definitely say this is the first time that this has ever happened in my ministry, that my preaching was interrupted by a chicken.
That was, I grew up from the church where, when there was no music.
Yeah.
They're all a cappella, and they're I could say that the most, I, I just, so when somebody sang, in the intermission or songs, a solo of a beautiful, and I clap like that, people are all staring at me. So what the heck is doing? I kind of like interrupted the whole congregation because I was crying. I get in trouble for that.
I can imagine, because you kind of are a troublemaker. So,
I
okay,
am.
I know you are. I know you well. So let's go to our next question here. That why do you think that the producers of this show chose to portray Jesse and Simon the Zealot as brothers?
I didn't put anything down.
Okay.
I didn't either.
Okay.
I could have figured it out.
Yeah.
It was a little tough between the two because they both had goals.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
They were different, but yet they were. Let's say.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
That was really thought provoking. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's what I'm thinking, and my answer isn't right. It's just one answer because obviously the producers had their reasons for doing that, but Simon the Zealot was hardwired into thinking about the Messiah a particular way, that he would come as a military leader that would liberate the Jews, and that he was also hardwired. He devoted his life to learning how to murder people.
Wow.
That's who the Zealots are, is that they are people who were ready to take up arms and kill the Romans or whoever were the Jews' oppressors. And so he was ready to do battle. There had to be something in that guy's life that caused such a radical paradigm shift for him to consider Jesus as the Messiah. Now, there was that passage of scripture. Was it in Zechariah? Is that the passage? It was from last week's episode where he said that, that I'll know the Messiah comes when the lame walk. Yeah.
Yes.
And so, and so certainly that that very well could have been a turning point for a guy like him, and
I want to apologize a little bit because
Yeah.
the deers are going through our yard and the dogs are getting crazy. So I'm very sorry about it.
no, don't worry about it.
The deers are just going and eating all my lilies. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Rick has
No,
been-
it's not every place where you can say that the deer are going through your yard, where the deer and the antelope play. So, but yeah, that's just speculation on my part why the producers chose that. But obviously, there had to be something in Simon the Zealot's life, because he is really a radical person, probably out of all of the people that Jesus recruited as disciples, he would have been like the most radical, with his previous way of life. And but something there was a seismic shift in his life that caused him to say, hey, I'm going to leave that way of life behind and go a different direction. Go ahead.
And when you said that, it reminded me of when Jesus said, you can't buy your way into this group, or you're not going to have a special set of skills. Boy, did he have a special set of skills. He really, out of everybody, the self-discipline that he had to have to do all that. And now Jesus is saying, we don't need any of that.
Yeah.
That must have been pretty shocking.
Yeah. He was like a ninja, really. In many respects. So, okay. Next question. So Mary keeps her struggle bottled up from her friends and spiritual community. How typical is that when we're facing difficulties? How does that complicate things and undermines our best interests?
It's very common. And I think it's another tactic of the enemy too, is that the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And I think that when we're in the midst of trials, isolation is one of those things that just ends up making things worse for us instead of better. And we're in the scriptures, it talks about things like to carry one another's burdens and encourage one another and pray for one another. And you can't really do that if you're hiding out from everybody.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. We've seen it a lot in our ministry. Lorene, in my previous church where I worked, she was the, and where she worked too, is that she was the Celebrate Recovery director. And Celebrate Recovery is a ministry that helps people through their hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And, that relapse, just like with Mary. And, this is a wonderful episode. These next two episodes are just wonderful, helping us to understand how to avoid and also how to come back after a relapse. But Mary is a classic because she's doing all the stuff to serve others, and to teach others, and to be, if you pardon, maybe if she's being superficially engaged, but not really connecting with people at her heart, And when we do that, when we fail to connect with others at our heart, and where we're really kind of like struggling, those things just can kind of pull us down.
Well, when you are in the midst of trials, you need people to pray for you and support you more than any other time. And like for me, like a lot of times that's when I am almost immediate to go to people now, is because ending up in the hospital, I'll just post on Facebook. I'm like, hey, pray for me. And then immediately I'll have so many people praying for me, and it gets, shared or whatever. And so, I had people around the world that were praying for me when I was in the hospital, or when I had my car accident, or different times, throughout my life. I could say almost immediately had people praying for me and during those times, and it was made a huge impact to be able to have a network of people lifting me up when sometimes I couldn't even say what it was. Like, I couldn't really be praying on my behalf even, but people were praying for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's wonderful.
And
Go ahead, Lorene.
Well, I saw how, people were talking about Mary and how strong she was and what she had come from. And I think she kind of had set herself up to not be the vulnerable one, to be the one that could
Yeah.
help, and that's very dangerous. And that's one of my struggles is, asking for help. I'm not good at it. I'm not good
Yeah.
at it.
And
So,
most ministers aren't. Most ministers are really good at giving and serving, and they're not good at receiving and being served.
yep.
You know, but the body of Christ, the church, has to function in both directions. Where there are times when it's our turn to give and serve, and there's times when it's our turn to receive and be served.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, actually, Celebrate Recovery was what taught me the
Just trying to
most
get it. Go
about
get the
being
thing.
vulnerable. Is that I felt like that by being vulnerable, you actually do a service to others, because they get to see they're not alone in their struggle. That they're, they don't have to feel like, I'm the only one who feels this way. Versus when we act like we have it all together and we don't, then people think, oh, they don't really struggle, or I'm really the only one who has this problem, and it only kind of perpetuates the problem of feeling like that you're alone,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
by hearing other people's testimonies, I feel like testimonies are probably one of the most powerful weapons that we have against the enemy. That's our story, and it can't be refuted. It's like, this is actually what happened to me, and this is how God worked in my life. And so by being vulnerable, we get to bring people along with our story.
Nora, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I would like to agree 100% with Karen. Okay, in our situation in the past, that I was alone. Almost everybody knows what we've been through, almost everybody. But without the prayer of everybody's support of prayers, uh, I probably will not be. We will not be reaching our over 32 years of marriage, and probably we will be gone for. We'll be separated or whatever. But with the prayers of each and everyone, we were able to endure it. And the good part of it is that because we stayed married and because we use people are using us an example. And I could see the people looking at us and said, if they can do it, why can't we?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
because we have endured so much, and that there are times that like loneliness is really not good. I remember throwing myself on the floor and just crying out loud, but without the prayers of the people of my church people, and we will not be able to succeed, and we will not be able to achieve what we have, spirituality in our relationship with the Lord and with each other right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move on to our next question here. And it says,
Oops.
what, did I skip
6.
one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting trigger happy. So John the Baptist says to Jesus, it's becoming real, isn't it? He asks Jesus if he feels ready, and Jesus replies, I'm always ready to do my Father's will, but that doesn't make it easy. Both Jesus and John had a sense of their destinies, yet stayed the course in their ministries. How important is courage in doing what's right? Lorraine?
Well, I see Jesus and John as being courageous, but when it comes to me, my definition of courageous is a coward moving forward, because I'm a coward, but I want to move in the right direction. But I don't feel like I'm courageous at all. I just feel like, oh man, you just got to do this. Just buckle up and go do it. But I don't see it as courageous. I'm a coward.
Yeah. So, yeah, courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done in the presence of fear.
Amen.
You know.
Amen to
But,
that.
and actually, this Sunday I'll be preaching about the crucifixion. And, there's always new things, or at least maybe old things that get reinforced, or you get to see in a new light. And in last week's episode, we saw that moment when Jesus is walking into town three or four of his disciples going to the pool of Bethesda. There we go. And that and there's some people being crucified alongside the road. Now, that was a common sight. It wasn't like Jesus was the first guy in history. It was a common sight and a common means of execution that the Romans used. But then, in preparation for the message, that I also went in and read a little bit more about the scourging that Jesus endured, and I found this guy on YouTube who there's actually a guy out there on internet land who makes kind of authentic scourges according to how the Romans did them, and he sells them. Okay, and there's this minister who bought one, and what he did is that he set up a big bag, about 25-pound bag of dog food, and he took that scourge to that dog food bag. Well, it wasn't much time at all. And a dog food bag, of course, Rick and Nora, you got a big dog, and that's yeah, too. Okay, but a dog food bag is a pretty sturdy bag, 25 or 50 pounds of dog food, and he took that scourge to that thing, and it wasn't too long before it just laid it completely open. Many of the people who were condemned to death at crucifixion did not survive the scourging, and the Romans, they were in a position, they didn't have the same limitations on their abuse that they inflicted on their victims as the Jews did. Matter of fact, the scourge that they used, the flagellum that they used, was specifically designed to inflict as much pain and anguish as possible. It had bits of metal and bone and glass embedded in it. And so, and when I'm thinking about Jesus, and I'm thinking about him moving in that direction, knowing full well that this is going to be that this is not just something he knows about, it's just something he's walking into. It's incredible. It just really is. So, okay, let's see, where are we? We're right here. Mary eventually opens up a bit to Rama, but then she re-engages with the task at hand of learning the scriptures. Rama misses a key opportunity to minister to her friend. How might we do a better job of helping others when they're struggling? What do you think?
Shut up. Shut up. No,
Shut
seriously.
up.
Keep your mouth shut. You don't need to. I'm learning this. Just listen. Get them started with a question, and then just listen to them talk. They need to just share it and get it out.
Yeah.
Should I say, don't join the pity party?
Yeah. That. But and I like what you said, Lorraine, is that you get them started with a question, and sometimes it can be just simple as saying something like, things seem a little bit off for you right now. Can you tell me about what's going on? And then just wait. I got a degree in life coaching. As a matter of fact, from a university up in Nora's neck of the woods. I came up actually to Rick and Nora's place for the graduation ceremony. But our main instructor in our life coaching courses, he said, let the silence do the heavy lifting.
Yes. Yes.
So ask the question, and then, and I have kind of a rule of thumb, and I'm telling my trade secrets now, but I have a rule of thumb. When I ask a question to a person who seems to be in crisis, then I will just sit back and I will count to 30 slowly in my own head. And if they don't respond by that time, then I might follow up by asking, something like, it seems like you're having difficulty putting it into words. Maybe we can just start with something simple, or tell me about that, But yeah, let the silence do the heavy lifting.
I think you need to stop what you're doing, because like they were even in the middle of doing a study, which was good, and it was a good thing that they were doing, but she should have stopped what she was doing when she saw that look on her face and asked the question, and then, like you said, listen and wait and see what they're gonna say. But sometimes you think, oh, this is good, or I don't want to interrupt what we've got going on here or whatever, but it's just more important to take the time to see what's going on with the person.
Yeah. And another thing too, and just from the life coaching perspective, but it's true. I mean, in dealing with people, resist the temptation to give advice. And one of the questions that I often ask people when I'm coaching them is that, how about for you? What do you see as the next step forward? And then again, just, let them grapple with it. And so, and obviously you can, coaching is an element of guiding when you're coaching someone, but learning how to step back from, and I think that a lot of Christians have that strong compulsion to quote a scripture or to give advice, and oftentimes that's just completely the wrong thing to do. So, anybody else want to follow up on any of that? Good enough? Okay. Here we go. Things began to escalate for Mary, and she began to relapse into old ways of dealing with her struggles. Often when we're struggling, we turn to familiar solutions to our pain. Why are these solutions bound to fail?
Did they work before?
Yeah, they didn't work before.
Because you aren't thinking right when things are bothering you that bad.
Mm-hmm.
When your life is difficult, you just sometimes don't make the right decisions.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, that, and those familiar solutions are not solutions. They are just, they're just adding to our problems that we have.
Can I say that they are just band-aid?
Yeah, exactly.
Temporary.
Yeah, exactly. That and one of the things that I've taught at recovery before, and I was actually sharing it with a group that I another discussion group that I have with this ministry, and that I always tell people that you don't have a drinking problem, you got a drinking solution, and as soon as we can figure out what your problem is and address it, you won't need this solution anymore. And same with other addictive behaviors or compulsive behaviors, whether it be drugs or whatever, or even anger or food or whatever. We don't have whatever it is, X problem. It's an X solution, but it's really an inadequate solution. And so that's what Mary did. She went back to what was familiar. So, as a zealot, Simon had a particular understanding of what would happen once the Messiah came. Jesus tells them that no one buys their way into my group because of special skills. In what way might our talents and abilities complicate our walk with Jesus? And how might these be redeemed as a disciple of Christ? Any ideas?
Because many times I said to myself, I think I know better. But you know,
Yeah.
and it's not. Uh, I always think it that way. Hey, I'll do it this way. I think I know better.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work.
I remember a heroin addict that I knew, and I really liked him just as a person. He was a very enjoyable guy to hang out with. I wasn't hanging out with him, doing drugs. This is a guy in recovery, okay, and that. But he would say in our meetings, he says, "My best thinking got me here."
Wow.
And, yeah. And so in what ways might our talents and abilities complicate our walk with Jesus?
Because we
We don't think we need him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-sufficient. But how might these be redeemed as a disciple of Christ?
Like the example I thought of was Peter, as he was a fisherman who became a fisher of men.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times God takes what, he gives us those talents and abilities, but he takes it in and shows us how he intended for them to be used, and it's for his purposes and for his glory. And so I think that's like kind of how, like it can get added to like he draws it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Lorraine,
Lorraine.
Oh, I was just thinking, I've just lost my train of thought.
That's all right. It happens.
I was thinking how when we think we're doing it the right way, or we know it's the right way, or whatever, that could be a fact. But I've learned that other people have their ways of solving a problem that is not even really one I thought of, and one I don't really like, but they had their way and they got in and they did it their way, and the end was sort of the same.
Yeah.
But when I'm stuck in no, this is the way it's going to be, then I close myself off to even hearing what anybody else has to offer. And there's been times when people come up with these ideas and I'm like, where in the world did that come from? But it works, and it worked out fine in the end. It didn't have to be my way. I had somebody once tell me, or we were in a discussion and they said, they were talking about being in control. And I said, I'm not controlling, am I? And my friend, she goes, you are, but you do it in the nicest of ways. That was my beginning of realizing that I need to step back and let other people do stuff. They can do it. They can do it.
Yeah.
I need to plant that in my backyard.
Yeah. So, and one of these days, when it's our turn to crawl up on the beach, that life is going to go on without us, and people are going to have to find their way. So, all right.
And you can't do it with a big spoon.
All right. Tell me what you mean by that.
Matthew.
Huh?
Well, I like Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
He's so funny. He just takes, like, every time anybody says anything to him, he thinks about it. Like, am I that big? Is that true? I love it. I love that part.
I love that moment. Yeah, I finally made the connection where this demoniac is coming into the camp. You got to take him on with a salad spoon. So, all right, our final question for tonight is, this episode is bracketed by a verse of scripture from Psalm 139:8 that reads, If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. What do you think is the point that they're making?
Wherever you go, there they are.
Yeah. Well, wherever you go, there he is, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's-
You know, you can run as far as you want to, just like with Jonah,
Yeah.
but there's God.
Or Mary.
Yeah, and Mary.
Yeah.
You can do great things and God will be there, or you can do not so great things, but God is going to be there, and He's there for when you maybe fall from your heights, or when you need to be lifted up from the depths.
I
So,
have experienced all those things.
so anything that you'd like to say before we wrap up this evening?
Next time I'll pay more attention to the show. I really enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
I'm not one to give reports after watching the show.
Yeah. Well, next time is going to be the follow-up to. It's kind of the sequel to this particular session, so I'm giving you a kind of a heads up, and so and I'll send you out the listening guide in advance.
Thank
There you go.
You can take a look at it.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up things for tonight. Thank you so much, and particularly Rick and Nor. Thank you for joining us this evening. So let me just jump over here for a moment. Karen, oh, yeah, there we go. Oh, make some room for me. Oh, there we go. And so, but thank you guys for watching this evening. And I just trust that you found some moments from our discussion this evening, and certainly from the episode, that have been a blessing to you. And so every Wednesday night, you can find us here at Discuss the Chosen on Facebook. We also broadcast live to YouTube, and you can find us on the web at compasslive.org. And so that's it for this evening. And for those who helped me out with the broadcast, once again, I want to thank you